welcome to No Question About That. This is United Inc., our football finance show with Jamie, Subprime Goals on all the socials. How's it going, Jamie?
Yeah, very good. The season started. It's given us a lot to be optimistic about, potentially pessimistic as well. But, you know, we as we've said before, I'm an optimist, so fingers crossed. Some of the momentum that we gained last week from a performance side can be maintained, and over time, you know, maybe we'll see that on the business side of the club as well.
Oh, exactly. No one cares about the football. It's the P&L that we're looking at. Dear me. Yeah, it's, well, I guess once we come out of this transfer window and we can stop talking about transfers, we'll mostly be talking about football. Although there is plenty of really big ticket items on the financial side of things to talk about. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the new sponsorship deals that United have signed. Not the big ones that we speculated about last time, so no training ground or training kit sponsor, which would be quite high ticket items. There's some regional partners we can talk about. And we'll talk a little bit about stadium financing. You wrote a piece on your Substack about the potential options there. Still live. I'm sure the club are out there pitching it to every investment bank, SPAC, sovereign wealth fund and corporate sponsor they can find at the moment. And we'll talk a little bit about ticketing and some of the issues that are there around potential ticketing at the new stadium, and also licenses and bonds and some of these kind of American tricks that are sneaking in, which I don't think fans are going to be happy about. And a little bit of financial outlook. It's not quarterly results until I think September the 10th is next quarterly, but you can have a look about where we are today and what it might mean for the last 9 days of the transfer window. So, yeah, I didn't sign Carlos Baleba, as we speculated about on our last pod, and whether they were going to drop 100 million on that. So that means they're going to drop 100 million in the next 9 days, right? No problem. We've got the money. Definitely weren't borrowing that.
Well, exactly. So I think, in terms of where we are, digging a little bit deeper into some of the disclosures that we've had on Companies House and obviously the news flow surrounding player sales, like my best guess is that the revolving credit facility that United has with Santander, which is about 150 million, my best bet is that that's probably been the one that has been expanded. And, if we're taking Omar Barada's comments at face value in terms of living within its means, my hypothesis at the moment is that the new sponsorship deals that have been signed effectively is the collateral or the means by which the credit facility can be increased. Now, in terms of ability to spend and cash, clearly that is a good thing. However, I would say if you look at kind of the next 2-3 years and how the squad is likely to evolve, some of the contracts that you've got dropping off, I think to purchase someone like a Baleba for the fees quoted, north of 100 million, there is still this delicate balance of needing to move players on from the balance sheet, whether that is a Sancho, whether that is a Højlund, Anthony, etc., the rest of the bomb squad. Now, the overall market, as you can see, is, I'd say, tense at the moment. You've got a supply and demand dynamic where there's clearly some teams that need to be buying some players. Tottenham is definitely one.
Poor Tottenham fans.
Exactly.
I mean, I just as a slight side on your conversation here, that was quite funny, wasn't it? I mean, it's just poor Tottenham fans. Eze, by the way, love him as a player. Just shame he's gone to Arsenal. Really, I mean, obviously he's that kind of quality of player, and he might have been wasted at Spurs. But I'd much rather see him in a Spurs shirt if he was going to have to go somewhere than in an Arsenal shirt, for fuck's sake. But yes, legitimately funny that Arsenal gazumped them at the 11:59 and 59 seconds on the clock.
No, exactly. And it's going to be really interesting to see. I made a little tweet about it. It'll be really interesting to see what Daniel Levy does now, because you've got this. We talked about it before, but you've got this scenario where there are so many players that are out on the market where it's known that clubs really need to move them on.
Yeah,
whether that's Chelsea, players,
half of the Chelsea squad.
Exactly.
He can have a bundle deal on Sancho, Antony, and Højlund. 100 million. What do you say, Daniel?
Exactly. I think it's coming into prime Daniel time. If there is, there might be a better phrase for that. But he's going to be able to make some really good deals. Villa's another one. Not necessarily that they're, say, looking for a striker or an attacking option, but they are probably still going to have to move some players on to be able to kind of regenerate their squad. Jacob Ramsey, prime example. So you've got this scenario now where the supply is clearly outstripping the demand, and there are some good players that are out there looking to be sold. But what does that mean for United? I'd say there's probably a bit of cautious reason to believe that we could move some of these players on. I think it might just be really close to the end of the window. And what does that mean for incomings? Well, whether it's you might just not have enough time to get a Baleba deal done.
Yeah.
And if they go down the route of, say, a lower cost alternative, I've seen a lot of people kind of question that. I think it ultimately depends on the deal structure, right? If you're buying someone who could grow, but also is almost like a bit of a water carrier for 2 or 3 years, and you don't they're going to be functional, and potentially, you could improve them a little bit and sell them at a decent price, or they become your number 2 over time. I don't think that's a bad option. We have to think about, okay, well, at the end of this season, Sancho, Casemiro, whatever happens to them, their contracts will be dropping off. Mm-hmm. If you buy a Baleba, that is a big bet. You're taking up a lot of that capacity that's freed up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we are talking about tens of millions in play for United over the next 9 days, just on potential exits. So it looks like they were on the high end of the book value for Højlund with their request from Milan. They'll get around there, maybe with a loan plus obligation, something like that. It seems that Ruben Amorim's gambit of leaving him out the squad against Arsenal has worked on convincing the player to move. I feel sorry for him. He's a United fan. He talks nicely. From a football perspective, it's 2 years of mediocre performances, bursts of good stuff. From a finance perspective, if United can net out a book value, then it's a good deal. Probably, I mean, I kind of like to see him stay at the club, but from a financial perspective, that might make sense. So we're talking 30-40 million pounds locked up in that deal. Garnacho, I mean, there's anywhere between 25 and 50 million on the table there. Yeah, obviously he's an academy product. His book value is 0 because he signed a new contract. It's all profit. Antony, he's got 32 and a bit million on the book value there that United needs to somehow get back. It appears to be a market of 1 there because the player and his agent have done that. It's very sensible from their point of view because they'll get the biggest wages if it's the lowest fee. It's funny, I've seen a few tweets like this, hey, shouldn't this player X be embarrassed that no one wants to pay for them? I'm like, no, it's the other way around, for fuck's sake. That's exactly what the player wants, the lowest fee possible, because you get the biggest wages. Same with Alejandro Garnacho, market of 1, apparently, there. Chelsea set their own benchmark by paying 55 million for Jamie Gittins, or selling Noni Madueke for about the same as well. Apparently think Alejandro Garnacho is half the player, so no thank you. The other thing we should say from a finance perspective, I see a lot of people saying, we'll just stick him in the reserves. United cannot do that with Sancho and Antony. Could do it with Garnacho if you really wanted to make a point, because his wages are sub 3 million a year. You can take that hit. I mean, obviously they'd like the upside of the fee, But if there is no fee now, there's nothing wrong with waiting until January. It doesn't make much of a difference from a PSR perspective, at least. Accounting perspective, a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, bringing it back to kind of big picture, what, you know, the leadership are clearly trying to do in the transfer market and change the perception. As you say, carrying the likes... Well, I mean, Højlund's a bit of a special case. I think there's almost two messages being given, right? There is one message, which is to the bomb squad, which is, no, you aren't adhering to the way we would like you to be for our culture. As a result, it doesn't matter who you are, you are going to be moved on. There is a second, I think, message being sent, which with Højlund, which, like, I agree with you. I feel really sorry for him, or I've got a lot of sympathy for him. Like, he's come into a situation, young, still learning, thrown in at the deep end, and not had, you know, the best environment to thrive and succeed. That inevitably has meant that, you know, judgment has been passed on his abilities, not good enough, surplus to requirements. And therefore, if you haven't met, you know, those standards within 2 years of being at the club, you know, the club will exert their negotiating powers, their levers, to be able to kind of put you in a position where actually you've almost kind of got to take the deal for if you want to be a successful footballer long term.
Yeah. And it's in an ideal scenario, you might loan him out and say, hey, go learn away from the club, learn what it is to be a striker again. You know, that natural talent he has got. We know he's scored some really high quality goals. There have been periods where he looked like a Manchester United quality striker. I'm not saying it's been for very long, but there have been short periods. You might loan him out, bring him back, much as they did with Diogo Dalot, and comes back a better player. Now, there's an argument about whether Dalot's the high enough quality, but, you know, just about good enough, Premier League quality player at least, right? And so that might be best. But if they are also, you know, looking at the P&L and they can get a fee right now, we've got another striker in, maybe that's the one they do. There's an open question about Joshua Zirkzee. Reports that Napoli might be interested there. It seems like the club want to keep him. It's harder to say from a footballing perspective that he's really going to have a lot of games this season. He's not going to start up front ahead of Benjamin Sesko, nor in any of the number 10 positions ahead of the 75 number 10s that we have at the club at the moment. So, yeah, watch that one. I'd say, you know, if United got a decent offer there, they might be tempted. But yeah, a lot of stuff going to happen in the next 9 days, and it is worth a huge amount of money. Both in amortization and wages.
Yeah, and I think, like, the big thing, if you're looking at kind of long-term financial health of United, Sancho is the most important one. Yeah,
24 million a year on the PSR hit is for him, you know, on the amortization and his wages. Yeah, the huge one.
And you know, the wages in and of themselves, like, that's the one where it's got the, you know, ability to scupper the club a little bit. You know, what we talked about a few episodes ago when the results did come out, you know, there was a dramatic impact from loaning out Sancho, Rashford, Malacia, Antony on the wages. If United have to carry that for another year, it just eats into that available cash for next season.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the stadium financing a little bit. You've written a fair amount about this. I mean, we haven't really had an update since the launch of the plans, Foster and Partners plan for this big tent. I wonder whether that will get watered down a little bit, the design concept there. But, you know, that's another question. 100,000 stadium, anywhere between, pick your number, 1 billion and 2 billion cost. It looks like, at least on the political perspective, because this is a thing that delays massive projects in the UK quite a lot, that they have air cover from Manchester Council, Salford, the Mayor, Andy Burnham, central government for any infrastructure, so roads and rail and stuff like that. The master plan we haven't seen, I think, from a legal perspective. The bit that gets signed off, that's normally public domain stuff, so we will see that at some point, which is what has been agreed and signed off on. And then the really important thing is, how do United pay for this? 1.5 to 2 billion pounds, awful lot to stick on the P&L. Suspect it's not going to be like that. So yeah, where are we with this?
Yeah, so look, I think, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but the big element to this in terms of getting funding that will not impact the fans would be some form of equity funding. And there's a number of ways that you can structure that. You can have, special purpose vehicles. You could have joint ventures, equity for revenue, future revenue share, all of those sorts of types of deals. And I imagine the club are speaking to the market, putting it out there. Hey, this is going to be one of the biggest stadiums in the world. It's going to probably be the highest revenue generating stadium in the world. It's going to be underpinned by a club which is going to be the most profitable in the world. We know the club has said that as a stated goal. It's a pretty de-risked financial investment, but in terms of from a returns perspective, very, very attractive, particularly when you put it in the broader context of stadium, like the number of stadium projects that are going on or have occurred in either the UK or Europe. The pie and the opportunity to go after is much bigger here. I think it's obviously very, very difficult to say, one, whether investors will bite at that. There are so many other factors, macroeconomic factors, that will also go into that, which are completely out of your control. And so, in the absence of that, I took a stab at, okay, how could you do this in a relatively cost-effective way that's not also going to hinder the club long-term in terms of, being able to buy players, et cetera, et cetera. So I think one of the big things here is there had been reports about, I think the number of seats that would be going towards hospitality, and also a concept called PSLs, personal seat licenses, which, as you mentioned at the start, is very much an American concept. And for the American listeners, they will know all about this. My perception is that they are hated just as much in America as people who know about it in the UK.
Little anecdote, I know someone who bought one on the halfway line at the new stadium in LA, the SoFi Stadium. $1 million was what it cost for the personal seat license, the bond, effectively. They did this at Wimbledon and Wembley as well. So there's some examples in the UK, but very much an American thing.
Yeah, and these personal seat licenses, for those not aware, it's basically you're buying the right to be able to purchase a season ticket. So you're paying an upfront cost for 3, 4, 5, 10 years to then be able to buy a season ticket each year. So, effectively doubling up from a club perspective the money that you can get. But, these American teams, like in the NFL, they generate hundreds of millions of dollars from these. I think, the Las Vegas Raiders got $500 million. The MetLife Stadium, it was actually for two teams, they kind of raised a combined $360 million. I think if the club are looking at this, I really hope they don't press ahead with that for very obvious reasons, right? Like the number of fans that would immediately price out. And I think also, the impact that would have on the atmosphere. I was there at the stadium. Yeah. I was there at the stadium. We were talking earlier. I was there at the stadium on Sunday, and I was messaging people watching the game, and you could palpably feel whenever United were getting close to the goal, like the words I used were, this stadium is ready to explode. And I feel, if personal seat licenses come in and what that does in terms of like the likely clientele and fans that will be going, you will just lose a lot of that.
Yeah, and we've certainly, we have seen this at Wembley, where at half time the stand facing the camera is empty for a good 5 to 10 minutes, so everyone's enjoying their hospitality. That was a bond, right? Those were bought for 10 years, I think. as part of the financing, or maybe even longer. They're reissued in some fashion afterwards. It will be interesting whether this kind of concept, because I suspect it is coming in because it's a potential revenue source, how limited it is, right? What kinds of seats? Is it just those near the dugout, the premium seats on the halfway line? That used to be the same cost as everything else. I mean, I had a seat there for 3 seasons, 3 seats away from what was the away dugout. They've swapped over now.
Yeah.
That would have been for sure one of the seats where there was an extra license, or they wanted to do that as hospitality, or it's seen as the premium one, or you get it in baseball behind the catcher, or in other sports where it's, the courtside seats in basketball, or whatever it is, right? They're deemed to be premium. Don't leave money on the table. Find some way of extracting more value from those supposedly premium seats. Although we've seen at Chelsea them try to do this, and they've had to bring the prices down quite significantly because they've just not been selling enough. So I've no doubt Sir Jim and his analytics team are looking at how to monetize this in the biggest way possible.
Yeah, and I like, for clarity, if they did this for those super premium hospitality seats, there's an element of me which is like, fine, go ahead, right? Barcelona are doing this and selling, seats for up to 81,000 euros. And I think, a lot of those seats anyway end up going to corporates. And actually, there's still a community aspect that you can do with that in terms of, getting some local businesses and being able to kind of structure deals so that they can actually buy some of these corporate seats, and, not it just being for tech giants or whoever.
Well, yeah. And then look at the FIFA, what FIFA have done with the World Cup, and their pricing on corporates is astronomical, like $40,000 for one game. Or you can buy blocks of games, sorry. There may be a few games. Or I'm surprised United haven't got in on the crypto train yet, because with the FIFA World Cup, you have to buy FIFA NFTs in order to get the right to buy a ticket to the World Cup. And I mean, that's just free money, isn't it? It's just a way of jacking the prices up even more. And again, like all clubs are looking at, how do you stratify your customers? If it's not pure dynamic pricing, what are the ways to extract more value other than leaving money on the table, as United have done for years? Because before the Glazers came in, club was one of the cheapest. Going to sound like I came from Victorian times, but I literally paid £1.50 when I first started going to United. £1.50, rip out your little ticket at the Stretford end, go in the kids' enclosure, super bargain. Glazers came in, jacked up the prices, but then froze them for 10 years, and United have been behind the market, effectively, and probably leaving a lot of money on the table. But what does that do to local fans? Pricing them out. What does that do to the atmosphere? Ruins the atmosphere. And, it is true already that Old Trafford has a significant sort of tourist attraction population who people could come for the day. It's not quite the same as being a local fan, and all of that, and all of these affect the atmosphere in the stadium for sure.
Yeah, and look, I don't think United should lose or restrict like the amount of fans that come from abroad. I do think that's a really unique aspect. Well, maybe not unique, but I think the level of those sorts of fans probably is unique to United. And so I definitely think that should be a core part of the stadium. I think the key element is, okay, how do you keep this balanced, right?
Yeah.
And how do you just balance the money the revenue maximization with the core principles, I think, of like what Old Trafford is all about.
Well, exactly, yeah. There was some speculation in some of the media reports that hospitality could be up to 40% in the new stadium. I'm not sure I believe that. I mean, I know you've written about this as well. Yeah. That would be way outside the norm for most new stadiums, or most stadiums full stop. But alongside that is, of course, every single Premier League club is, especially the big ones, elite, I should say, are trying to reduce the number of season ticket holders, because that limits your flexibility to, again, not leave money on the table when selling tickets to people who are coming in for one game or coming from abroad. I mean, I've done this at Camp Nou, where on most of the years we were able to get one of our local team to buy us tickets, so that would be 15 or 20 euros. It's like really cheap Socios ticket. And then one year I bought a ticket for the Copa del Rey semi-final. This is probably a decade ago now, and that was like 120 euros or something. And I was like, wow, I'm here for the weekend or whatever. Why not? You just factor it into the cost, don't you?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what is the balance United are going to try and find here? And do they listen to fans? Because it sounds like from the fans forum, the noises that come out of that they are not really listening to fans at the moment, because fans are going to go, hey, I want all the players and I want it to be as cheap as possible. And the club, I think, at least from Ratcliffe's perspective, is probably not thinking about it in terms of what's his personal return here. It's like, how do I maximize revenue in order that the product on the pitch is as good as possible?
Yeah, and I think, look, on this... Yeah, and I think on this stadium mix point, right, the thing that United will have with the new stadium that a lot of other elite clubs, at least in this country, the UK, won't have, is the scale.
Mm-hmm.
100,000 seater stadium is by far and away the biggest stadium capacity that you'll have in the UK. But even compared to Liverpool, that will be somewhere in the region of 50% higher than what they have got. And so when they've moved to 18% hospitality in order to kind of maximize their revenues, actually you can still keep, you could probably double hospitality or premium seating percentage from 5% to 10% and still have more seats in nominal terms devoted to that sort of fan base compared to everyone else. And so I just yes, by all means you've got to try and push the envelope, but just be careful that you don't go too far. And I think
we'll look for news on that. I don't think there'll be an announcement of any kind in the quarterly results that come out September the 10th. Actually, that'll be the annual results, won't it? And maybe there's surprises, but I'd be surprised if there's anything there. But yeah, look at the market for what kind of SPVs or joint ventures or equity funding. Is there any movement on the Ineos front? I mean, Sir Jim's got a lot of value there. He could, if he fancied, 62% holder of Ineos there. That is at market value worth £15 billion. Would you like to release some of that for your legacy, Sir Jim? We'll see. All right, what else do we want to talk about? Sponsorship deals. So there was a few announced. They didn't really announce the full value of the contracts, but I read some analysis that said the total value of the contract of the new sponsors that were announced was £70 million or something like that. So this was a regional sponsorship with Parimatch, a betting company. There was a deal with Coca-Cola and a deal with a fintech whose name I'm forgetting now, but you will remember, I'm sure.
Yes, Sokin is the
Sokin,
is the
that's
other
it, Sokin, payments company. Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think all those deals that have been announced so far, in reality, are not going to move the dial all that much.
No, and they're fairly small. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, we're really having to go close in terms of the words that have been talked about and published here by journalists, but the 70 million figure is reported to be total deal value rather than 70 million revenue per year.
Yeah.
So, 70 million total deal value is good, but it's not game changing. And, when you've got the likes of the Marriott deal and Tezos rolling off, you need actually probably, that more level of sponsorship deals just to kind of stay standing still. So I think it's a good thing. The big ones though are still to come. So can United find a training kit sponsor, also a new sponsor for the training ground, which obviously opened a couple of weeks ago. We talked about this in the past, but I think timing to these things is important, and you don't want to undersell yourself and tie yourself down to too long a
10-year
deal.
contract. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that training kit, training ground, if it's a combined deal, should bring in 20 million a year, if not more. And obviously, we didn't talk about it in the stadium piece, but naming rights on that, we should look. That obviously won't be done until the stadium's completed, but that could be in a similar range, or maybe even more. Spurs were looking for 25 million, have never found it. The Arsenal combined shirt stadium deal is I don't know what's the total figure for there, 60 million or something like that. But there's a lot of money there for United. Piece in the FT today, it was kind of general piece. There weren't a lot of details, I think, about United's sort of commercial income lagging behind. We've known this for 5-6 years now. It flattened out, and obviously Ed Woodward was very wrong in terms of United's performance on the pitch affecting their commercial attractiveness of it. And we are in a position where we are not as attractive as we were 15 years ago. Mark Armstrong, the new chief business officer, has a lot of work to do on that front, I think. And so does Ruben Amorim, making an attractive team that will be attractive to all these major blue chip sponsors.
Yeah, look, I think it will be the true test of how well the business side, the commercial side, and the footballing side work together. We know under previous regimes, one side, being the commercial side, has probably held sway over a lot of decisions. It does feel like potentially things are kind of moving together. The fact that Mark Armstrong has come in and quickly signed these deals, okay, they're not game changers, but actually it's a pretty good indication of how good he is as an operator. And it has facilitated, clearly, us doing things in the transfer market, which we didn't expect. Mm-hmm. The question is now, can the footballing side deliver on what they need to? Because that is going to be the true unlock for Mark Armstrong, and make conversations easier and, structure them in a really attractive way for United.
Yeah. The September the 10th, I'm just guessing there, it's going to be around there, will give us a good idea of where they're guiding in terms of profitability. I mean, obviously, I think the last quarterly's guided 180 to 190 full year EBITDA. That would make United, if not the most, very close to the most profitable club in the world. It's always it's an interesting line, that one, isn't it? Because Real Madrid will make a huge amount of profit on their new stadium and with a massive commercial footprint, and then spend it all. So, because they're not a publicly owned company, they don't need to break even. But that's been their model for years. So who knows where United will get to, but it's with the new structure around the actual operation side, ripping 50 million a year out of the cost of the business. United are in quite a healthy position from a P&L. Would be even healthier if Ruben Amorim's team can make European football next year, which obviously makes a huge amount of difference.
For sure.
Did we go through our list?
The drag-along rights.
Drag-along rights, yes. Let's talk about that, because there's been some misconception out there about what this really means. So this is the expiry of the clause in the sales agreement between Trawlers Limited, or now Ineos, and the Glazers. It's now open. This clause is active. The Glazers can, in theory, if they found a buyer for the full sale of the club, so if the 6 Glazers who vote together decided to sell, they could drag Sir Jim into selling his shares at a floor of 33 a share, which would be an absolutely horrible deal for anyone buying it. But, hey, if it's a state or something like that, maybe they would do it. This does not mean they are actively selling or marketing the club, though. Explain how these clauses work and who it's really there to protect.
Yeah, so there's a number of clauses at play here. So the first one is the drag-along rights, and basically, as long as the Glazers are the majority owners, and during this operating window that Sir Jim and Ineos have of kind of being in charge of the operations of the business, if an offer was to come in above $33 a share, if the board agreed to a sale, they could invoke rights whereby Ineos would have to sell their shareholdings. the board obviously have to act in the long-term best interest of the business and all shareholders. That is actually kind of a pretty standard clause that would, in these sorts of deals, and also kind of more broadly in terms of corporate governance. The question really, and then the second clause that's relevant is the right of first offer. So in the event that effectively the Glazers want to sell some of their B shares, which are the ones with the higher voting rights, to a third party, effectively a new investor to the overall ownership group, Sir Jim will have the right to be able to match said offer, as long as it's not part of a full sale. I think the reality in terms of how these mechanics work is, look, that floor on the price, the $33 per share, is critical here. I've mentioned this before on previous podcasts, but if you look at it from an investor perspective, the club now financially, look, the wheels are turning to make it better, but is it in a materially better state than it was when Sir Jim took ownership, or took partial ownership? Not really. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and in order to do that work, you potentially got to replace a whole raft of senior leaders again. So to me, it kind of boils down to, has the market in terms of potential buyers for Manchester United increased or decreased versus last time? I find it hard to see how it's increased. Look, I could well be wrong here. You never quite know what an investor sees in a investment opportunity. But that's kind of the quick summary.
Yeah. I mean, I think at that kind of price, so United are trading at $17.19 as we speak. That's a cap of $2.9 billion, right? So that floor is basically double. That's a very large premium. If you're a private equity fund of some kind, you'd look at that and go, hey, where's my ability to return 3 to 5x that on my investment over a fairly long holding period? I just don't see that at the moment. There's a very, very small market there. Plus, especially with the governance structure, you wouldn't really have, private equity companies not going to buy the whole thing lock stock. So you still have a very complicated shareholding structure there. As if you were to do that, if you're an individual investor, very high net worth, the number of people that could do a deal at $6 billion or something like that is vanishingly small, right? If you discount the number of Chinese billionaires that could potentially do that, that would require state sign-off effectively. Same in the Middle East, right? There is no private individual that would be doing a deal like this without state sign-off as well. Makes it more complicated. I guess you could look at Gulf region sovereign equity funds, sovereign wealth funds. Which ones exactly? There's not many. And then you look at US sporting investors who own some other sporting entity and would be interested in doing, FSG type model or Bowley type model. Again, very small number. Although we have had a few deals in the US sports franchise world that have been up and above that as well. So it's not like there isn't some market there. It's just very, very tiny. I mean, my guess, I suspect probably yours as well, is that Sir Jim would like to do what he proposed initially. If you read the sales document readout, he wanted to structure this with some kind of call options over a 3-year rolling period in order to get to a majority ownership with all the voting rights that come with that. That's what he wants to do. That's what he proposed. I suspect that's still the most likely outcome here.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments, and kind of have always thought, if you're putting that sort of deal structured together, it's clearly a view that you're going to have the money eventually. The question is, and as we've said before, no one knows the answer to this really apart from a couple of people. Can he get those funds together in the next 18 months? That's really the thing to be looking at, like February 2027. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I actually keep meaning to go look at it. How much did he pay himself as a dividend in the last financial year? Because the one before that, he paid himself
personally, £500 million, which is very nice if you can get it. I might get out of bed for that. I don't know about you.
Probably.
Like, probably just raise myself. Yes.
Yeah.
And Ineos not in the most amazing shape as a company at the moment. That obviously impacts Sir Jim's ability to spend personally, or the company, which now owns the shares. It's not just him, although he is the majority shareholder. It impacts them. They've pulled back from sport a little bit. They're currently in a litigation with Tottenham, which is always quite fun, over the sponsorship deal. They're counter-suing Tottenham for £1 million, apparently. I'm not quite sure why. But there you go. Good.
Show of strength, maybe.
Show of strength, yeah. I think it is that, yeah.
Exactly.
It's just part of the negotiating, isn't it? You know, as you get with this litigation, I used to work in the chip industry years and years back, and everyone would counter-sue each other because that comes down to the final number. I mean, it's very rare in these kind of things that you get an obviously one bad actor and the other side is perfectly innocent. And so everyone's got a little bit of shit on their shoes. Who's got the most shit? We'll find out. But yeah, Sir Jim fucking with the rivals is quite fun.
It seems to have a proclivity for it. First Newcastle, now Tottenham.
Yeah, but very good. All right, I think we've come to the end of our agenda. We'll be looking at the what's moving here in the next 9 days. I'm sure we'll be back either on the end of the window before it, and then there's the annual results in the middle of September at some point. What is Mark Armstrong going to do in his well, we've got to, if the end of the window doesn't bring us the shiny new toy, we've got to have a new sponsorship deal. That's been the rule over the last 10 years, hasn't it? You know, not a new player, but hey, look at our secondary shirt sleeve sponsor or Vietnamese regional betting partner. Something like that will come along to distract us all.
Yeah, something to show a bit of EBITDA growth year on year and keep the investors happy.
You'll never sing that.
Exactly.
Very good, Jamie. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ed. Fun as always.
Listeners, viewers, if you're on YouTube, well, you're watching us. You can also find us all on the apps, podcast apps. If you want to get our extra shows, they're on NQAT at patreon.com/NQATpod or the Apple Podcast subscription feed. I'm on nqatpod.substack.com twice a week. There'll be a newsletter out later today with a long list of alternatives to Carlos Balebo. Will we buy one? Not sure. And you are what on Substack?
That's a good question. I wish I knew. I should know.
Sub-prime goals.substack.com. Something like that. Wow.
SP Goals 7. That's
very
the one.
Good.
That's the handle.
Yeah. Nice catchy name there. It's a funny thing actually with your socials. I always have to go type it in to Twitter and or Blue Sky to remember exactly what you are on each platform.
There you go. I just like to keep people guessing.
Bye now.